You're listening to Kevin Smith Reports
on Oldies 101 WHBU 1240 AM, second oldest radio station in the state of Indiana, the oldest commercial station in the state. I've promised you this, and I've looked forward to it. We have a gentleman on WHBU that has taken over a family business and legacy. And many of you may remember the Buzz of Madison County interview that we did just a few years ago with the owner of Wildflower Ridge Honey. And that was David Barrickman, and we became good friends as a result of his honey making, my like for honey, my love for honey, and we struck it off as a friendship, and I always enjoyed visiting with him. Well, David has left us now, of course, but in his footsteps, following up behind, is Skylar Majors, his grandson. And Skylar, I really appreciate the fact that you're spending some time with us on WHBU Oldies 101. You actually are following in the footsteps of this legendary honey maker in Madison County.
Yes, David Barrickman is my grandpa. On my mom's side, and he was so much more to me than, just that. He was my mentor, my coach, and he shepherded me into, this role of taking over Wildflower Ridge Honey and carrying on his legacy that he worked his whole retirement through to the end of his life, running and taking care of the beehives. And so it's been a great privilege to get to take over that legacy for my grandpa.
Skylar, there's a lot to be said for carrying on the family business. I don't know how many years young you are, or if you care to share that with us.
Yes, I'm 29 years old, and I've been working very hands-on with the business with my grandpa since 2016. However, I've worked with bees and beekeeping with my grandpa since I was 3 years old. So he's invested a ton of time into my life, teaching me all the cool ins and outs that come with beekeeping.
What were some of your early memories that made impressions on you and this genre of farming? Because it actually is a genre of farming, if you can recall.
I was my grandpa's designated smoker. So when you're a beekeeper, you use a device called a smoker, but my earliest memories working with Grandpa in the bee yards was very hot August days, sweating in the bee suits, but working that smoker and making sure that my grandpa always, had something to keep the bees docile, because I catch myself now today wishing I had somebody running my smoker, just because occasionally when you're working hives, you don't always need that much smoke. And as I'm breaking into hives and whatnot, my smoker will put out on me and die because I'm not using it. And so that's my earliest memories, is running the smoker for Grandpa. Additionally, one of my favorite things when I was a little kid, I was in first grade, and my grandpa organized and ran a program at the state fair called Beehive Alive. And what we did is we shipped down a full-size gazebo, put a real-life beehive in the center of it, and had it all screened off, and my grandpa and I would go down in front of crowds at the state fair and do a live, in-depth hive observation and show people what you do as a beekeeper breaking into a hive. We would find the queen bee, and I would parade the frames of bees and brood and honey that we'd show people around the edges of the gazebo, showing people the whole process. So that's probably one of my favorite memories, thinking back on beekeeping with my grandpa.
The audience may or may not have surmised by now, your grandfather is no longer with us. We unfortunately lost him recently.
Yes, Grandpa passed earlier in 2023 in April.
Certainly a popular fellow, and I'm sure that a lot of people think Wildflower Ridge. That is a label that is on the shelves of many different vendors throughout the state of Indiana. I've seen the product in Kokomo, Indiana, of course in Anderson, Indiana at the South Main Street Market. It's also available at Jackrabbit Coffee, a lot of local vendors. So you do a lot of networking to get the product out.
Yes, so it is. It's kind of its own juggling act, if you will. So there's the piece of juggling the beehives, but it is a lot about the people that you meet and the relationships that you forge along the way. And Grandpa was great with that. And most notably, he met a lot of these contacts and people through just years working at the farmers markets. I have come to learn myself, and my grandpa always loved working the farmers markets, but what makes this job so much fun is the people that you meet at the farmers markets. You have every color and creed of person that you can possibly meet that's all kind of come together in this community in itself that's a farmers market really is. The people always make it a joy just to show up in the morning, but they also in kind recommend businesses. They have, their own businesses that they come to me and my grandpa for.
Skylar, this would be something that some people would describe as a job. Some people would describe it as a vocation. Some people would describe it as a hobby. If someone were to ask you about Wildflower Ridge honey, how would you describe it?
Well, I'd certainly describe it as my career. I view myself, when people ask what I do, I say I'm a farmer most of the time. Occasionally I'll say I'm a small business owner. And I think both are true in its own respect. What I like about this job is I wear so many different hats, but at the end of the day, I'd say I'm a farmer and I carry on my grandpa's legacy as such. And so when I think about, my day to day, it is my dream job. And I'll say that everybody's dream job comes with its downsides as well. It's great to work for yourself, but it's very stressful. There's no days off. But one of the favorite memories I have towards the end of my grandpa's life was him and I bonding in a way about how much work everything was. People would question maybe my ability to run everything on my own without grandpa's help, or, I might even question my ability to do everything on my own. But when I was talking to grandpa about it, he'd say, well, just tell those people, stand back and watch me. And he'd smile with kind of a knowing grin when I'd talk about, those headaches or that little bit of stress. And he says, you got it, buddy, just stand back and tell them to watch you do it, because I know you can. And it's true, in this job, I feel like I get to know my grandpa a little bit better even today, because we're going through a lot of the same motions and encounter maybe some of the same headaches day to day. But it's a job and it's a legacy. It's a way to get to spend time with my grandpa still, which is really important to me. But it's been hard.
Skylar, I can imagine that a lot of people your age wouldn't take on something like this. What do some of your peers say when they find out what you're doing?
I think almost everybody my age has viewed what I had done as crazy. I think that's pretty reasonable to say, because I had a very standard job and I worked very standard roles. I sold IT and cybersecurity services for corporations before this job. And so it was a suit and tie, showing up to the office every day type of deal. And when I told my friends last time I was up in Chicago for work, I said, I think I'm going to leave this job and take over my grandpa's farm and honey business. And they say, wow, that's a complete 180, going from a business executive type of culture to living out on a farm in Anderson, taking care of beehives and, selling honey. It was a crazy transition, but I think a lot of people my age, which I'm 29, look at what I do with a little bit of envy and loving the idea of working for yourself and the freedom that comes with. And they look at it with a lot of fear too, because it's a lot of uncertainty of where your next paycheck's going to come from and, those types of things. But I'm confident in, our customers to continue to support the business. I'm confident in my work ethic that Grandpa's instilled in me to carry on everything that this takes. So it's a risk. People probably look at me like I'm a little crazy, but at the same time, I think a lot of people admire the opportunity that's there.
Anyone who listens to the buzz of Madison County knows that we are a small business advocate, and I think you touched on it earlier. That's exactly what this is. You're running a small business, but you're the manager, you're the sales director, you're the delivery person. Like you said, there are a lot of different hats. You're running a small business, and there's nothing small about running it.
That's exactly right. I do all those things, but it's not without help. My little sister, Kayla Schaefer, she is my marketing manager. So I at least don't have to wear that hat day to day most of the time.
With that having been said, the beekeeping business, one thing, the sales of the honey, another. And like I said, honey is your most visible product. A lot of people may not realize that Wildflower Ridge actually does more than just honey, because your grandfather was responsible for crops and livestock as well to some degree. But the honey is the most visible product. Let's talk about the process of getting the honey ready from the time it leaves the hive until it gets on the shelf where we buy it.
It is a very hands-on process, and it takes variable amounts of time. Usually the end of August is when harvest starts to wrap up. Sometimes it can be earlier, and then usually I can get a late harvest in September or October to get a darker colored honey, which changes in flavor for people too.
Now, local honey is important, isn't it, to your health?
Yes, certainly. So this local raw honey, and I'll kind of expand on what it means to be raw honey too in a minute. Tablespoon daily dosage of raw honey helps you with your local allergies related to pollen, and that's because it's made from the pollen and the nectar that's causing your allergies. And so a tablespoon daily dosage gives you just the trace amounts of pollen to help your body desensitize its reaction to the allergen, like pollen in this case, so you don't have the sniffles or hay fever quite as bad when the pollen count rises. Now jumping back to what raw honey means. So honey that you get at the store is called U.S. Grade A honey. What that means is that it's 51% United States sourced honey. So that could be from Florida, Hawaii, Minnesota, all mixed into one batch potentially. And then the other 49% is mixed in from imported honey from typically China, Brazil, Uruguay, Canada are pretty common exporters of honey. And that's all mixed in together. And then that batch of honey is superheated at over 220 degrees. It's essentially a pasteurization process that they put it through. And that burns out a lot of the raw vitamins and minerals that's also naturally held in honey. And so when it goes through that extreme heat and then the mixing process, it loses a lot of those natural benefits that you get, at your local honey.
Is it myth or is it fact that it takes a long time for a bee to manufacture enough honey to fill a teaspoon?
You're completely right. So one bee will visit over 2 million flowers to produce, I believe it's a tablespoon of honey there. And a single worker bee will produce 1/8 of a teaspoon of honey over its entire life.
Skylar, of course, a lot of people don't realize that bees are actually fragile. We a lot of times think about getting stung, but bees are fragile, and this is a fragile environment that they must do their work in. What can we, as neighbors and consumers, do to help keep the honey-making business alive and sustain this kind of a lifestyle?
Yes, that's a good question. So beekeeping is harder today than it's ever really been. And a large part of that is the widespread use of insect-killing pesticides and flower-killing herbicides. So I would urge people 2 simple things that they can do to make their yard a little bit more sustainable for important pollinators like bees is to have a freshwater water source. Anything as simple as a bird bath, a kiddie pool. We have a cow and sheep water trough as our main water source here on the farm, but a fresh source of water will do wonders for colonies of bees and pollinators in your area. I also urge people to maybe skip on the weed-killing herbicides, even though the beautiful green golf course-like yards are nice to look at. They're just big green deserts for bees, and the same go for the yards that have no flowers. So maybe consider a little white Dutch clover or leaving simply natural flowers for bees to utilize throughout the year, because nowadays it seems food sources do become a challenging aspect to keeping bees later in the year.
Now, Wildflower Ridge honey, of course, like I said, we're used to seeing the bottles of that beautiful golden elixir, if you will, on the shelves at some of the local produce places that we've talked about and the markets that you've talked about. But there are also some products besides that beautiful honey that come out of Wildflower Ridge as well.
Yes, so I make whipped honey, a spreadable consistency of the raw honey. I also partner with the local candy shop here in Anderson, Uranus Fudge Factory. They use my honey to grind up fresh peanuts and make a wonderful honey peanut butter that tastes like a payday candy bar on a spoon. I do comb honey and chunk honey and various honey candies and honey sticks.
Well, Skylar, I want to commend you for following in your grandfather's footsteps. I want to, again, praise you for running a local business and keeping one more business alive in Anderson, Madison County.
Well, I really appreciate that. You know, it is a great honor to get to carry on Grandpa's business. You know, my grandpa has been probably the most influential person in my entire life. You know, he spent years of my childhood giving me little sheep to take care of. He was incredibly patient with me, encouraging of, you know, me learning beekeeping and mechanical farm stuff too that he taught me over the years. He absolutely is one of the most important people that I ever had in my life. And, you know, I'm incredibly proud to get to keep Grandpa's legacy carrying on so that people know David Barrickman and the knowledge and trade and impact that he made on Madison County and Indiana and, you know, especially my life too. Pay it back to him.
All right. I appreciate that, Skylar, and thank you for your time so much, and I look forward to a subsequent visit with you in the near future. Skylar Majors of Wildflower Ridge Honey, and if you are into health care and want to avoid those allergies and reap the health benefits that honey has to offer, well, as I said, it's available at a number of the small markets throughout the area and always at the summer farmers market as well.